April 22, 1969, 6:41 a.m. Over the red-dusted airstrip at Port Harcourt, Nigeria, the morning heat is already pressing down like a hand on the back of your neck. The air smells of fuel, wet earth, and salt from the nearby Niger Delta. On the tarmac, a silver MiG-17 sits crouched and predatory, its nose pointed east toward Biafran territory. Soviet advisors stand just off the runway, arms folded, sunglasses hiding their eyes. This is supposed to be a demonstration of modern air power, jets, doctrine, inevitability. Then the radio crackles. "Contact, low altitude, visual." The Nigerian radar operators frown. The blip is wrong, too slow, too small. Out of the hazy sunrise, two shapes appear, tiny, insect-like, flying barely above the treetops. Propellers, piston engines, the kind of aircraft no serious Air Force fears anymore. And yet within minutes, the most advanced jets Nigeria possesses will be burning wreckage on the ground, destroyed by mercenaries flying planes that look like museum pieces. This is the beginning of an embarrassment no one in Moscow or Lagos will ever publicly admit. 2 years earlier, Nigeria had fractured. In 1967, the eastern region declared itself the Republic of Biafra, and Africa's most populous nation plunged into civil war. What began as a political crisis quickly became a fight for survival. The Nigerian federal government, determined to crush the secession, turned outward for help. The Soviet Union answered. By 1968, Nigeria's Air Force was being rebuilt in Moscow's image. Crates arrived stamped in Cyrillic. Inside were MiG-17 fighters, Ilyushin Il-28 bombers, and Soviet manuals translated into hurried English. Egyptian pilots, veterans of wars against Israel, were contracted to fly combat missions while Nigerian crews trained. On paper, it was overwhelming force. Against them, Biafra had almost nothing. No real air force, no radar network, no jets, no allies willing to intervene openly. But Biafra had one thing Nigeria did not expect: men with no flag. They arrived quietly. South Africans, Rhodesians, Europeans who had flown Spitfires and Mustangs a generation earlier, veterans of wars that were never officially acknowledged. They came for money, yes, but also for the challenge. At the center of them all was a man named Rolf Steiner, a former German paratrooper, and later Count Carl Gustaf von Rosen, a Swedish aristocrat with a soft voice and a violent imagination. Von Rosen looked at Biafra's desperation and made a decision that seemed insane. If you can't match jets with jets, don't. Instead, he bought 5 Malmo MFI-9 aircraft, civilian trainer planes, lightweight, cheap, barely armed, each one powered by a small piston engine and a wooden propeller. They were so small that Nigerian radar often ignored them as birds. Von Rosen modified them in secret. Under each wing, he mounted French-made SNEB rockets, the same kind carried by jet fighters. He trained his pilots to fly nap of the earth, skimming rivers, roads, and tree lines at altitudes so low that even anti-aircraft gunners couldn't track them. The unit called itself the Babies of Biafra, and they were about to humiliate a jet-powered air force. Back at Port Harcourt, the MiG-17s were preparing for another routine mission, bombing Biafran supply lines. The pilots felt confident. They had speed, they had altitude, they had Soviet doctrine behind them. What they didn't have was imagination. The MFI-9s came in at less than 100 feet. Their engines sounded like lawnmowers. Ground crews barely looked up.
until rockets slammed into the runway. The first MiG exploded before its pilot could even reach the cockpit. The second burned as fuel trucks erupted beside it, turning the airfield into a furnace. An Il-28 bomber, worth millions in Soviet aid, was shredded where it sat. Panic followed speed. Anti-aircraft guns fired wildly, shells bursting harmlessly above the attackers. The mercenaries rolled their tiny planes, popped flares, and vanished back into the trees. The entire strike lasted less than 10 minutes. Nigeria's Soviet-backed air superiority, carefully built over years, had just been mocked by 5 propeller planes. Within days, the psychological impact spread faster than the physical damage. MiG pilots refused to stay in their cockpits on the ground. Aircraft were dispersed, hidden under trees, moved constantly. Airfields that once felt secure now felt hunted. Every strange engine noise triggered alarms. Every shadow over the runway brought fear. Soviet advisors were furious. This was not how modern war is supposed to work. Jets were meant to dominate the sky, not be stalked by flying toys. And the mercenaries weren't finished, because now, emboldened by success, they began to hunt the jets in the air, not with speed, but with surprise.
May 3, 1969, midday, over the mangrove swamps near Aba, eastern Nigeria. Heat ripples distort the horizon. From 15,000 feet, a Nigerian MiG-17 slices through the sky, its engine screaming, silver skin flashing in the sun. The pilot, an Egyptian contract officer, call sign Falcon 2, scans below. His orders are simple: intercept anything that flies. He sees nothing. That's the problem. Below him, so low they are almost invisible against the earth, 2 MFI-9s are threading their way along a river bend. Their pilots fly with one hand on the stick, the other resting on the canopy rail, eyes locked forward. No radio chatter, no second chances. They know the MiG can outrun them in seconds, so they don't run. They wait. The mercenaries had studied jet pilots carefully. They knew the habits, the arrogance of altitude, the reliance on speed and climb. Jets hunted by diving from above, using gravity and velocity as weapons. But those tactics failed against prey that never climbed high enough to be seen. When the MiG finally spots them, it's already too late. The jet dives hard, airframe shuddering as the pilot tries to line up a firing pass, but the target breaks, sliding into the shadow of a tree line, then vanishing completely. The MiG roars overhead, cannons firing into empty space. And now the jet is slow, low, vulnerable. The MFI-9s climb just enough to fire. Rockets streak upward, white smoke curling like claws. One detonates close enough to rattle the MiG's tail. Shrapnel punches through control surfaces. Warning lights bloom red across the cockpit. The jet pilot pulls back, fighting the stick, trying to gain altitude, but the damage has already been done. The MiG staggers, trailing smoke, and disappears behind the trees in a violent flash of orange. For the first time in the war, a Nigerian jet has been destroyed by an aircraft it could barely see. Word spreads fast. By evening, every MiG pilot knows the rumor: the trees are alive. The psychological shift is immediate and brutal. Jet pilots begin to refuse low-altitude missions. Training manuals say never to descend into an environment where speed cannot be used. Soviet doctrine emphasizes energy fighting, altitude, climb rate, disengagement. None of it applies when the enemy lives at 50 feet.
The mercenaries exploit this ruthlessly. They attack at dawn and dusk, when shadows blur shapes. They fly along roads, rivers, even dry stream beds. They park their aircraft under palm fronds, refuel by hand, and move before Nigerian reconnaissance can respond. Every successful strike deepens the humiliation. Soviet advisors demand tighter discipline, more patrols, better radar coverage. But radar cannot track what never rises. May 10, 1969, Enungu Airfield. A MiG-17 sits armed and ready at the end of the runway. The pilot waits for clearance. Sweat runs down his back. He keeps his canopy open, scanning the sky, scanning the grass, scanning everything. Then the explosion hits. A rocket slams into the fuel depot. Another tears across the runway. Shrapnel rips through the MiG's fuselage, shredding tires, puncturing tanks. The pilot never even starts the engine. In less than a month, Nigeria has lost or damaged more aircraft on the ground than in the air. Jets meant to dominate entire regions are being pinned down by planes slower than some cars. For Moscow, this is intolerable. For Lagos, it is a crisis. Because now the question is no longer whether Nigeria can win the war. It's whether its air force can survive it. And in the shadows, the mercenaries begin planning their boldest move yet. An attack so audacious it will force the Soviet-backed command to admit what they fear most. Modern power means nothing if you cannot adapt.
May 18, 1969, Lagos, Nigerian Air Force Headquarters. Maps cover the walls. Red grease pencil lines mark air corridors, targets, and now zones of fear. Soviet advisors speak in clipped tones, their frustration barely contained. This war is not following the rules they know. The MiG-17 is a proven fighter. It has faced sabers, Mysteres, even Phantoms. It was never meant to be threatened by civilian trainers flown by men without uniforms. Yet here they are. The problem, the Soviets insist, is not the aircraft, it is discipline. So discipline is imposed. New orders go out. MiGs will operate in pairs. No low-level flight below 3,000 feet. All takeoffs and landings covered by armed patrols. Ground crews dispersed. Camouflage everywhere. On paper, it looks sound. In practice, it plays directly into mercenary hands. Because every restriction placed on the jets increases their predictability. The mercenaries notice immediately. They watch patterns, count takeoff times, learn which airfields cycle patrols and which rely on habit. They listen to Nigerian radio traffic, poorly encrypted, often chaotic. Most importantly, they understand something the Soviet advisors don't. This is not a contest of machines, it's a contest of initiative. May 23, 1969, dawn, near Benin City. A single MiG-17 lifts off, its escort delayed by a mechanical issue. The jet climbs, nose high, engine howling. For a brief moment, it is alone. From the tree line, two MFI-9s rise like startled birds. They fire immediately, not to kill, but to confuse. Rockets detonate near the runway. Anti-aircraft guns open up, spraying the sky with uncontrolled fire. The MiG pilot banks hard, trying to assess the threat. That hesitation costs him. A third MFI-9 appears from the west, firing into the airfield infrastructure. The runway is cratered, fuel trucks burn. The MiG aborts its mission and flees. The mercenaries don't chase. They don't need to. Another airfield has been neutralized without a single jet-to-jet engagement. For Soviet advisors, this is doctrinal heresy. Their training emphasizes decisive engagement. Find the enemy, destroy him,
control the airspace. But the mercenaries refuse to be found. They fight like guerrillas with wings. Behind the scenes, Moscow grows uneasy. Reports sent back are careful, sanitized, but the reality leaks through. Equipment losses are mounting. Prestige is at stake. This is not supposed to be visible to the world. And yet, foreign journalists begin to notice. Photographs circulate. Burned MiGs, shattered runways, tiny propeller planes parked beside dirt roads. The story becomes impossible to suppress. Nigeria has jets. Biafra has mercenaries. And the mercenaries are winning the air war. By June, Nigerian pilots are exhausted. Morale collapses. Some refuse combat missions. Others fly high, drop ordnance blindly, and return home. Ineffective, but alive. The skies belong to whoever dares to enter them lowest. And now, the mercenaries prepare to push the humiliation further, not by destroying more aircraft, but by forcing Nigeria to make a choice no modern air force wants to face. Stand down or risk losing everything.
June 7, 1969. Early evening, over the Biafran interior. The sun hangs low, turning the sky copper and blood red. This is the hour jet pilots fear most. Shadows stretch, depth disappears, the world flattens. Two MiG-17s patrol at altitude, flying straight and rigid, eyes fixed forward. Their mission is defensive now, protect the airspace, discourage attack. They do not descend. Below them, unseen, the mercenaries move. The MFI-9s skim over villages and fields, engines throttled back, almost silent. The pilots know the terrain intimately now. Every hill, every bend in the river, every place a jet cannot safely follow. They are not hunting aircraft tonight. They are hunting certainty. The strike comes against infrastructure, fuel dumps, parked transports, communications trucks. Rockets ripple out, accurate and precise. Fire blooms. Radios go dead. The Nigerian air defense network fractures again. The MiGs circle uselessly above it all. For the first time, a jet-powered air force is reduced to a spectator in its own airspace. Inside Nigerian command centers, the realization lands hard. Jets cannot be everywhere. They cannot guard every airfield, every road, every fuel truck. To stop the mercenaries, Nigeria would need more radar, more helicopters, more ground troops, more coordination, things it does not have. And even then, there is no guarantee. Because the mercenaries don't need to win every fight. They only need to keep flying. June 15, 1969, Port Harcourt. A Soviet advisor stands beside a damaged MiG, running his hand along scorched metal. This aircraft was designed to fight NATO, to intercept bombers, to duel sabers over Korea and Vietnam. Now it is being protected by sandbags and camouflage netting. The advisor understands what no report will ever say aloud. This is a failure of doctrine. The enemy did not bring better technology. He brought better thinking. Under pressure, Nigeria makes a quiet decision. Jet operations are reduced. Bombing missions are curtailed. Airfields rotate usage, but fewer aircraft fly each day. The risk is too high. The embarrassment too public. Officially, nothing has changed. In reality, the air war has been lost. The mercenaries sense it immediately. They fly more boldly now, lower, deeper. Each successful mission reinforces the myths surrounding them. To Nigerian troops on the ground, the sound of a small propeller becomes terrifying. To MiG pilots, it becomes an insult. These planes should not exist in their world, yet they do. But wars do not end on myths alone.
Biafra is still starving, still blockaded, still losing the ground war. The mercenaries have bought time, but time is running out. And as international pressure mounts, as famine spreads and politics intervene, the skies over Nigeria begin to quiet. Not because the jets have reclaimed control, but because the world has decided it has seen enough. The humiliation, however, will linger.
July 1969. A dirt strip outside Uli, Biafra. The runway is barely a runway at all, just a stretch of hardened earth carved from jungle. The MFI-9s sit in the shade, wings scarred, paint chipped, rockets long gone. Mechanics work with hand tools, no uniforms, no salutes, just men keeping fragile machines alive. The mercenaries know the truth now. They won the air fight, but not the war. Nigeria, stung and embarrassed, never publicly acknowledges what happened. Official communiques speak of operational adjustments and successful containment. Soviet advisors quietly rotate out. Aircraft losses are attributed to accidents, maintenance issues, enemy ground fire. Nothing is said about tiny planes flown by foreigners rewriting the rules of air combat. But inside Nigerian squadrons, the lesson is unforgettable. Speed is not invulnerability. Technology is not dominance. Doctrine can be outflanked. The mercenary campaign ends not with a final battle, but with attrition and politics. International pressure intensifies, relief flights increase, ceasefire talks begin. The MFI-9s fly fewer missions, not because they are afraid, but because there is less left to protect. One by one, the pilots leave. Some vanish into other wars, some go home, some never speak publicly about Nigeria again. They don't need to. The evidence is burned into runways and memory. January 1970. Biafra surrenders. The war ends in silence, not in the roar of jets. Nigeria emerges unified, victorious on paper, but altered. Its air force will never again underestimate what flies low and slow. Training changes, doctrine evolves. The lessons learned the hard way are folded quietly into future planning. In Moscow, the files are closed. No medals are awarded for this chapter. History will remember the Nigerian Civil War for its tragedy, its famine, its suffering. But in the margins, in the footnotes Air Forces study but rarely publicize, there is another story. A story where mercenaries with civilian planes outthought a jet-powered military, where Soviet-backed aircraft were rendered irrelevant by pilots who refused to fight fair, where the sky belonged not to the fastest, but to the boldest.